So I'm looking at verses 12 to 13, and that's just kind of where I'm going to start here. But it says that if a priest's daughter marries a layman, she shall not eat of the contribution of the holy things. But if a priest's daughter is widowed or divorced and has no child and returns to her father's house as in her youth, she may eat of her father's food, yet no layperson shall eat of it. In Matthew 22, Yeshua he was confronted by a group of Sadducees. It seemed that Yeshua more or less aligned with the Pharisees more than the Sadducees in most of the things that he believed, especially when it comes to eschatology and the afterlife and spiritual things. So Yeshua believed in resurrection. The Sadducees did not, or at least not in the same way that the Pharisees did. And so they were kind of mocking the idea that, people are resurrected and then they go on to live like a normal life, or what you might call a normal life, whatever that means in eternity. And so they gave him this scenario that there's this woman who married a man. Her husband died, so she's widowed, didn't have any kids, so then she married the next one, his brother, according to the Levirate law. And he died, so still no kids, so she married the next one. There were 7 brothers, and then they all died. So at the resurrection, whose wife is she? Because she's one flesh with all of them. So, she can't have more than one husband, so which husband does she have in the afterlife? And Yeshua said, if you people even knew the scriptures, you wouldn't be asking this stupid question, because there's no marriage after the resurrection. Nobody gets married, nobody's given in marriage. And the implication is that marriage does not survive death in resurrection. You're married to somebody in this life, but when you die, the marriage covenant, that marriage bond ends. And Paul used this as an illustration in Romans 7 in verses 1 to 6. He's talking about our relationship to sin and the law. And he says, spiritually, when Yeshua died, we died spiritually with him, so that we died to the law. And so the law is no longer our master, which is what under the law means. It means that if you are under the law is your master. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to keep it or obey it. It means that it is your master. So when we died spiritually with Yeshua, that breaks that relationship that we have to the law. It is no longer our master. And now we are free to be rebonded to God. God becomes our master. And now we keep the law because we love God, not because it's going to condemn us. So Paul uses this fact of marriage ending at death in order to illustrate a truth about how we are free from the condemnation of the law and allowed to enter a new relationship with God. Earlier in this Torah portion, in the previous chapter, there's another thing where it's talking about the priest and how he prepares his family for burial. And if you contact a dead body, it makes you ritually unclean. It's not a sin. You're supposed to prepare your relatives for burial. If you are in a house with somebody who dies, you become unclean. Leviticus 21, 1-4 says that a priest can make himself unclean for his immediate family. And this includes, obviously this is somebody who's died. So he can prepare his immediate family for burial, and then he just has to go through this becoming clean process. And then it lists, these are the people who count as his immediate family after death. His father, his mother, his siblings, his children. And that's it. No wife. The wife is not listed. And the last verse says that he will not make himself unclean as a Baal among his people. And there's some controversy, some disagreement over exactly what that means. Some translations say as a chief among his people, because he has authority and responsibility. He has to be careful not to make himself unclean because he's got these responsibilities he has to do. I think that's a valid interpretation. But the word Baal also literally means husband. So since the wife is explicitly not listed among his immediate family, then another translation, I think the ESV does it this way, he will not make himself unclean as a husband among his people. So that he can make himself unclean as a son or a brother or a father, but not as a husband. And my opinion is that this is because his marriage relationship ended at his wife's death. Now, any other man can make himself unclean for his wife. He doesn't have to go to the temple and do the sacrifices and all. He's not going to put the entire nation's spiritual life in danger by burying his wife. And so we've got examples. Abraham buried his wife. Jacob buried his wife. And that's a good thing. A man should bury his wife. Well, we hope that, it's not a good thing that he has to bury his wife, obviously. But, if she dies, it's a good thing for him to bury his wife. Unless he's a priest. And then he's not allowed to. And that's one of the things that there's some disagreement about on here is his wife included with his next of kin or not? And there's a lot of disagreement among the rabbis. Some say that because they are made one flesh by marriage, when it actually says, no one shall make himself unclean for the dead among his people, except for his closest relative. And the word there is actually except for his flesh. And it's not the same word as in one flesh. That's nephesh. So this is a different word. But they interpret this to mean, well, his wife is more his one flesh than his mother or his kids, so she should definitely be included. Except that if she was meant to be included, if it's going to give a list of people and it does not include her, and it does not use the word nephesh for flesh, then it seems to me that that's adding something to the text that it's the opposite of what God intended. Okay, yeah, so all of those shows us that marriage ends at death. The high priest can't bury his wife because she's no longer one flesh with him. The priest's daughter, I forgot to talk about this one, verses 12 and 13. If she marries outside of the priestly clans, she can't participate in the holy food that comes out of the tabernacle or the temple because she's no longer part of the Cohen. She joins some other clan or some other tribe. Maybe she's part of another Levitical clan. But she ceases being a member of her father's clan when she does that. She joins her husband's clan instead. And then it says, if she's widowed or divorced and has no children, she can come back to her father's clan.
Yes.
That's because that marriage relationship ended at widowhood or divorce. This is one of those things that shows that God does recognize divorce in some cases. And that severs the one flesh relationship. It's over. It is not meant to be a permanent relationship for all time. It's meant for this existence.
And then she can come under her father's.
Yeah, she can go back to her father's clan because that one flesh relationship takes precedence as far as clan membership. Yeah, if she has a child, she will stay with her husband's clan because that child is a member of that clan.
That's right.
And that tribal membership is inherited from the father, not from the mother. The Jewish tradition today says that your Jewishness or your tribal identity is inherited from your mother. But that didn't really start until after 70 AD. That's an adaptation they made because there was so much chaos and so much destruction after 70 AD. For obvious but reasons we'll leave unspoken, it was very difficult sometimes for a woman to know or for a child to know who his father was. And there was no way to prove it. But you can always prove who your mother is. There's no question there. The rabbinical practice changed after that point, so that now your Jewish identity is determined by your mother instead of your father, and that has only begun to change back the other direction in the last 50 years or so. And still, that's not really widely accepted. But God's pattern throughout all of Scripture is that your tribal identity comes from your father, not your mother. So there are some other things that indicate this. In Numbers, chapter 1.
If the child died, then that would release the mother to go back to her.
Yeah, if she had a child, but then the child died, I'm sure if her husband's family wanted her to stay, she certainly could. But she's also free to go back to her father's house.
When Ron died, it was 7 years alone, but then the first marriage is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was free.
Yeah.
In fact, his wedding ring is in the grave with him because they gave it to me. I said, no, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's over.
Yeah. That's definitely a more healthy sort of I mean, because the grief is still going to be there.
Oh yeah, I mean,
But
we
it's
were
more of a
38
healthy
years.
perspective from a biblical perspective to be like, that's over.
Well, I know it may be overkill, but there are several other passages I want to go to.
Okay, go ahead.
Kind of prove
Numbers.
this. Yeah, Numbers chapter 1, verses 1 to 4. Yahweh spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting, take a census of all the congregation of the people of Israel, by clans, by fathers' houses, according to the number of names, every male, head by head. From 20 years and up, all in Israel who are able to go to war, you and Aaron shall list them company by company, and there shall be with you a man from each tribe, each man being the head of the house of his fathers. So, even in the wilderness, by God's command, the clans and the tribes were numbered by fathers, never by mothers. In Deuteronomy 7, talks about all the Canaanites. God says he's going to get rid of these people, and you shall not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons or taking their daughters for your sons, for they would turn away your sons from following me to serve other gods, and the anger of Yahweh would be kindled against you, and he should destroy you quickly. The principle, even built into the language, is that you give your daughters to the other tribe, and you take their daughters for your tribe. It's not give your sons to their tribe and take their sons for yours. It's the other way. In verse 4, there is one rabbinic argument, is that the Hebrew here actually says singular, and he would turn away your sons from following me. So the rabbinic argument there is that he means the one who your daughter is married to. And so your sons would be your grandsons, and this other guy would turn your grandsons away from following Yahweh. Well, that means they're your grandsons, not that other tribe's grandsons. So they belong to you. But it says in both directions. And the he doesn't necessarily have to mean your son-in-law. It could mean your son, or it could mean the patriarch of their clan, or their false god. Whatever this he applies to, he will not turn your sons to worship these false gods instead of him. And it's all predicated on giving your daughter to the other tribe and taking theirs for yours. And this goes to another argument on this topic, and that's in Ezra, chapters 9 and 10. When they came back from Babylon, a whole bunch of Israelite men married Canaanite women. And that's because they were trickling back from Babylon. They didn't all just come in one great big wagon train. So when Ezra got there, as the new priest, he was like, what in the world are you people doing? And it says he was appalled in the ESV. Mm-hmm. And so he said, God has said, you are not supposed to marry these people. So why are you doing what God said not to do? But they determined that what had to happen is that all of the Jewish men who had come back from Babylon and married Canaanite women had to divorce these wives and had to send them away with their children. And so the rabbinic argument here is that since the children had to go too, then the children belong to the mother, and therefore they are inheriting their identity from their mother. But there's more to this story than that, because in chapter 10, it describes a process of hearings. They brought each couple before a kind of a tribunal, a panel of elders, and they interviewed each tribe and each couple and did a thorough investigation of each relationship. Well, what would be the point of that? You know that this woman is a Canaanite. What is there to interview? What is there to investigate? If the woman was a Canaanite and that was enough to say, you must divorce this woman, there's no reason for an investigation to say, is this woman a Canaanite? Yes or no? Yes, she and her kids have to go. So the reason, I think, for the investigation was to determine, is this woman still a Canaanite? In other words, is she still worshiping Baal and Ashtoreth and these things? Or is she worshiping Yahweh? And if she is worshiping Yahweh, she is now a Hebrew, and her children are sanctified with her.
We talked about that this morning, and like Ruth and Naomi,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been scrutinized at that point. But one wanted to continue on.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that has to be that some of them were permitted to stay.
Yeah, and I think that the story of Ruth disproves the idea that it's solely based on the lineage of the mother, because Ruth was a Moabite.
That's right.
Her marriage to Naomi's son was forbidden. He was not allowed to marry a Moabitess, except that then after he died, Ruth converted to worshiping Yahweh and said, Naomi, wherever you go, I'm going to go with you and I'm going to worship your God and I'm going to be part of your people. So then when she came back and she married Boaz and had a son, Obed, Obed is considered a Jew. He is a member of the tribe of Judah. He is not a Moabite. Otherwise, Torah requires that it's in Deuteronomy 23, a child of a forbidden marriage is not allowed to participate in the society of Israel. He is forbidden from entering the assembly of Israel. David would be forbidden from entering the assembly of Israel because he's only 3 generations from birth. And the law says up to 10 generations. So the existence of David and that God chose him to be the king of Israel because he's a Jew of the tribe of Judah proves that it's not about the genetic inheritance from his mother.
No.
He inherits his tribal identity from his father because his mother worships Yahweh, not the gods of the Moabites.
Exactly. But us, bloodline comes from the male.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, we're all connected to the bloodline. It's frustrating when people don't see that.
Yeah.
Well, it's just the authority and the leadership that it's given.
Yeah, that is another aspect of it. It's not the same issue, but it's related and for the same reasons. God chose 12 men to lead the 12 tribes of Israel. He chose only men as the priests, not because men are more valuable than women, but because they have a different role to play.
Well, and just like, listening to this cool dude on YouTube this morning talking about Proverbs 31, and the Proverbs 31 woman, and
She was me.
That's between you two.
teasing him. But listening to that and being reminded that, we know this, a good marriage is a partnership, and there's no woman just doing her own thing, where they're just going on separate paths. It's one thing for me to have my own business and be doing separate things from Jay on a regular basis in terms of task, but it's another thing to be not supporting his vision and only supporting mine, and that's a whole different thing. It's like what I do supports what he does. What he does is expect me to do those things, whatever that looks like. But what he also does is he draws from that, and then he also gives to me the things that I need. It's a synergistic sort of
Just watching
thing.
you two getting ready for this meeting. You make the coffee, but you do, it's that. It's,
we find the way to make it work so that we can accomplish the thing, right? And it's different in every relationship, but it really is about the Proverbs even talk about this, a contentious wife, all these kinds of things. It's there's a reason those things are a problem, and it's not because women are less valuable. It's because their role is valuable to the whole, the same way that a man's role is valuable to the whole of